and you are all welcome. This is your meeting so that you can get to understand how we hold officials in the city accountable for public funds at their disposal. Can the delegation just before us please introduce itself?
Good day to you. My name is Graham Gersbach, MMC for Finance. Seated with me is the GCFO, Mr. Kagiso Lurika. Sorry, I've just got a bit of sinus problems today. And the city manager is present as well. Do you just want introductions at this point, or do you want us to start with the item?
You may continue now with the item, MMC.
Thank you very much. I will allow the GCFO to actually continue with presenting the responses, and then we'll take questions. Thank you very much.
Morning, Chair.
Okay, just hold on, CFO. Councillor Hlabate?
No, thank you very much, Chair. I think with the MMC of infrastructure, we did request that there's a political principle, just lay the foundation in leading the item. I'm not sure if we're not doing the same here with the MMC, just for consistency purposes. Thanks.
Yeah, in the previous one of infrastructure, the MMC himself responded to us. So in this case, it's not applicable because I've not received a response from the MMC. However, he's here as a political head. So we'll allow the continuation. Thanks.
Morning, Chair. Morning, members of Mayoral Committee, MMC, CM, and colleagues. Thanks again, Chair, for the opportunity given to Finance and the Office of the CM to come and present our responses to the questions raised by MPAC, Chair. One issue, Chair, that we just want to clarify is that in terms of the audited financial statement as signed off by the AG, this matter has been resolved because it's shown in the notes. If you look at the notes, it's shown as an irregular expenditure, but underneath it's also shown as a write-off. So the net impact is zero, so there isn't any expectation necessitated from MPAC or council other than if they want to resuscitate that item that was before MPAC. So I just wanted to first clarify that to say if you look at the note in the financial statement, when you look at this item, it's sitting at zero. There is a irregular expenditure incurred, and when you go to the write-off and you interrogate the breakdown of that write-off, you will see this amount has been accounted as such, and it was resolved by AG as such. Chair, there isn't any expectation by AG to MPAC to do anything in this regard, Chair. But just to amplify or expand so that there is a clear understanding in terms of how or why we could have had this amount, Chair, is that At a particular point, I think it was on 2018-19, AG, they came and they identified irregular expenditure in terms of the tax compliance matters, because that was a 3-year contract. Chair. Then we provided our response, and our response, Chair, there was a kind of disagreement with them, because our view was that the tax analysis is performed at a particular point in time, which is the bid evaluation committee, as delegated or assigned those functions by law in terms of the supply chain regulation, that the bid adjudication nor the city manager, they don't have authority to look at documents from bidders, because the interpretation from AG was that when the accounting officer signs an appointment, an award, because if it's above 10 million, it must be signed by the accounting officer. There was an impression that she must go in the CSD and check those things. And our submission was that the current regulation does not permit to that. But even with those disagreements, we took the matter further to internal audit for further analysis. The report from internal audit came to support the view of management that in terms of the work that they've done, they don't see it as an irregular expenditure, and they submitted to say that that amount should be dealt with in such a manner. Then we came to MPAC, and MPAC took an item to cancel. But because this contract was a 3-year contract, then what necessitated us is that because there will be future expenditure on that contract post the work of the internal audit, was that because AG were of the view that is an irregular, even if we disagree with them, then we had to include it above, but take it out on the basis that the submission by MPAC there and council is that they have already accepted the report from internal audit to say there isn't anything wrong on this, there isn't any decision to stop that tender, and they've regularized that item. It was on that basis, Chair, that we thought it's prudent to say that expenditure that was incurred post the internal audit report should be indicated above and also be written off on that basis, Chair. And that is a submission we have made to AG, of which, Chair, was accepted. And you will see the similarities in the multiple reports. It's not only on this. If you look at even on the one on the on the cleaning, you will see that there is an X amount that internal audit is investigating, but post there will be future expenditure because an investigation report is done at a particular point in time. But because the tender is 3 years and there was no recommendation, Chair, from internal audit to cancel the tender, hence there was a future expense. But we took that analysis to say we need to be consistent with how AG has resolved on this. We took it up as an irregular in terms of what AG has said, but underneath it, we took it as a write-off based on the decision that was made by council to say we need to regularize the tender, because the regularization, Chair, in our understanding is not the regularization of invoices, but the entire procurement processes. So meaning that if council, they are saying they are agreeing that the tax compliance was in order, then it means that the entire tender is legit, and there can be expenditure relating to that particular tender, Chair. I'll stop here, Chair, and take. I don't know whether CM wants to add on this, Chair, but I think I've covered anything. If there is a further point of clarity, we can take, Chair. But ma'am, you want to add?
Good morning, Chair, members of MPAC and colleagues, and MMC responsible for finance. I think the CFO has actually summarized. What is missing maybe is the name of companies, the 2 companies that are actually part of the 7.3 million, and information that can be forwarded to the committee in the later stage. Thank you.
I'm going to take a round of hands from the members of the committee. Councillor Dolo, Councillor Chongizizwe, Councillor Mojapelo, Councillor Randall, Councillor De Beer. In that order, Councillor Dolo.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning to the officials of the municipality, members of the MPAC. Chair, I just want to respond to this matter. It's quite disturbing, to be honest with you, because the AG issued findings, and I believe they've discussed the findings with the management of the municipality. And if they fail to prove otherwise that the findings, they are not Chair, do I need some help with technology or? Okay.
May continue.
So if the management agree or disagree with the findings, they should vanish further in proof to the AG, to the Auditor General. Then the Auditor General will conduct another audit on this matter and issue the report. So the management cannot say the matter, it was not irregularities or incorrect. And I'm glad that the group CFO said the matter has been referred to the AG and it was accepted. But we don't have that report, that the matter was accepted by the AG. So if that report was tabled or it was sent to us, then we can indulge on that report. So we can't accept the response like this without a report from the AG. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Chongizizwe, Alderman.
Yeah, no, it's fine. No, thank you very much, Chair. Firstly, maybe it's just to, because this is it's a response from the city manager. Perhaps we may request CM that administratively we are being assisted just to get the council resolution that resolved on this matter. As per your response on page 4, that the matter has been resolved by council. And I think as council would have resolved, there would have been some background to the item. So that's the first part in terms of additional information. Secondly is that if there is something that the committee group CFO can refer to in terms of what we have reported as an acceptance by the Auditor General, I think that can also assist. I'm raising these things so that we assist the process to properly conclude on this matter. But linked to that, you will have to just take us into confidence as this committee on what is the future attitude of the Auditor General on the next non-tax compliant, because the fact of the matter is that Auditor General was firm on their view that this was irregular. So if you may share with us if you have that information about what will be the attitude of the Auditor General moving forward on such similar matter. I am raising this so that from our side, City Manager, we are at least taken into confidence as this committee on what would have been some of the measures you are putting in place to mitigate that which led to Auditor General, raising this as an irregular. Because it's linked to CFO, the future attitude of the AG, and if the future attitude is that it will be the same attitude on how they've raised the issue. Therefore, from the management point of view, to demonstrate corrective measures, share with us what from the management point of view are the mitigating measures that you have put in place to ensure that a similar irregular expenditure does not occur. And really this talks to the fact that as a committee we need to be assured that similar incident will not transpire. And if you explain that, at least to some extent the committee will be assured that there are effective controls in that regard. So I will pause there, Chairperson. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Councillor Mujapelo.
Thank you, Chair. Chairperson, I think I concur with the former speakers. When I read through the response, Chair, my first expression was that the response is too broad and vague. And how I wish, Group CFO, that the explanation that you had given had found expression here, because that would assist us a great deal. Because if you read it in the form that is presented, there's a lot of assumptions, that one makes. And I would like to take the content of the letter to the underlying point and come back from there, Chair. Assuming and giving the letter the benefit of a doubt, the matter has been resolved. It has been written off by council. And if there's sufficient evidence to that, Chair, we shouldn't even be wasting our time discussing the matter. Because that would be tantamount to us encroaching or clawing back into an era where we were not even responsible. There was a council at that point that would have expressed itself and made a decision. And I would like to concur with Alderman Dlavati to say, if then the report spoke about, and one other thing, I was more interested on the nature of the non-compliance. Because if we say non-tax compliant, I don't want to assume, but reading from the response of finance and response from internal audit, one assumes then that the non-compliance is a tax clearance certificate. But I would like to understand the nature of that, because in understanding that, then we are also able to recommend how in future that can be prevented, right? Group CFO, that issues of compliance are not an event. They can't happen at a point in time. We had a similar instance, Chair, with the CIDB, where companies would be compliant in terms of CIDB at the point of award. And then later on, and we know the certificate tells you that it's going to expire in a month's time. You can't ignore that. We know we can't ignore that. So that's why I'm saying, if we understand then the nature of the complaint, we are able to assist to say, so that in future we know how Auditor General operates, Chair. They sometimes stick to their guns. And it's important that we have to be smart. We can't be caught twice on the same issue. So let's understand the nature so that we make the input. So the recommendation for me, Chair, is indeed to say, in the explanation now in how we respond to this, one, let's get that extract that you referred to from the audit report, just the extract, that shows that indeed in the audit report, the matter was resolved. Okay, to say it was an irregularity, but here it was written off, so it cancels that. Then the second part is the council resolution. It went to council of this day. Here's a council resolution. We can go to the item, you would see it deals with the exact, city manager spoke about the companies, who would even see the companies. Then the matter is closed, Group CFO. Then we wouldn't have to, reinvent or regurgitate the matter that has been dealt with by the council before us. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Randall?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Chair, when you rely on something to substantiate any expression of comment you make and to prove a point, normally you would provide that evidence, and as our colleagues alluded to the fact here, a simple exercise here would have been to include a copy of the council resolution, and we could have possibly then said, fine, there is proof. But my next question is, why does the department think that this item is still here? Because you all know the processes. The AG flags it, we look into it, we do something, and we report back to the AG. What happened to the report back to the AG? That we had concluded the business of the year. Was that ever resolved? And then we started off with an amount of 15 million there in the past future. It's now been reduced to 7.3 million. There were several companies there, and now we're ending up with 2 companies here, and we don't have the report. I maybe think it would have been just prudent to provide that information. The CM alluded to that fact. But, you know, for future items that come here, we need to understand. We make decisions based on facts. We can't rely on hearsay. And I think maybe the letter should have been a bit more substantive. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Randall. Councillor De Beer?
Thanks, Chairperson. Good morning, MMC and senior officials. Would like to concur with my fellow councillors here. If we can just get a copy of that council resolution. Thank you.
CM?
Thank you, Chair. Let me start with the comments that were made by Member Councillor Mjapelo and Alderman Dlabati about the actual issue. The issue was about non-compliance in terms of tax. Our argument with AG expected the accounting officer to go into the CSD to check the tax compliance of bidders. Remember, the process of bidding is quite long. You start by advertising and closing date. So the argument was, do we check the CSD at the point of submission of bids, or do you check the compliance of CSD at the point of the BAC? Because remember, as accounting officer, I do not get full tender documents. I don't even see who bidded, how, and so forth. I only get a report from the BAC. The bid evaluation committee, our argument was companies or bidders should be tax compliant at the time of evaluation, because the BEC is the only committee in terms of bid process that is mandated to look into the documents, full documents. For each tender, you may receive 150 documents, so they're the only committee that is authorized to look into the bid documents. Even at BAC level, they don't get to see the tender documents. It is even worse with the accounting office. I only get a report from the BAC. So how do I then go into the CSD and check the tax compliance of companies? So it was, and AG being bully, they actually stuck to their guns that they believe that at the point of award, I was supposed to, because the award is only made by the accounting officer after looking at the report from the BAC, we should have actually gone into the CSD. I do not have the CSD system. I don't know the name of companies or the particulars of companies to actually go into the system and check their tax compliance. So the only committee is the BEC, and the process is just as that. Remember, when the item serves at the BEC, it takes time because they have so many documents. A company, as indicated by Member Mjapelo, that they may be compliant in terms of the CIDB. But at the point when the award is made, the certificate might have expired. It's like your tax clearance certificate. It expired at any given time, and it is outside the control of the bidder, and also outside the control of the acquiring institution in terms of bidding. So I will request the CFO to elaborate on some of the issues that were raised by members. But the issue about internal controls, Chair, we've tried to make sure that we do not have similar occurrence or irregularities in the 2021 financial audits. If we look at our audit, we don't have repeated findings as compared to the ones that, because this particular finding was actually an audit of 1920 financial year. Thank you. Through you, Chair, can I hand over to the CFO?
Yes, you may. CFO?
No, thanks, Chair. I will expand on what the accounting officer has already indicated, Chair. That we will, Chair, clarify the issue in terms of the note 52 of the financial statement. The one deals with the irregular expenditure, Chair. I think maybe it's just between us and the officials, your support team there, because when you look at note 52 as is, Chair, you will see it, and it has breakdown of irregular expenditure. The only thing that we should provide the committee is a supporting schedule that talks to the write-off, because the write-off is already there in the note, audited by AG and accepted that anything that is in that note as a write-off had supporting schedule. So we must just show that if in the note it says there was an X amount of irregular expenditure written off, then we must just show a breakdown so that MPAC can see that the 700 was audited by AG and accepted. I think that is what we will provide as a supporting schedule to that amount. Then the issue of the resolution, Chair, we will provide the resolution that talks to the 15 million. And it must be on that analysis that it talks to the nature. As the accounting officer has explained, the nature was the non-compliance in terms of the tax, of which our submission has been and is still stand that in terms of the supply chain regulation, each committee has been assigned responsibility in terms of the regulation. You can't impose either on the accounting officer or the bid adjudication something that is outside the regulation, because if you are taken on a review or an appeal, we can lose cases because people have performed functions that are not actually regulated. So when you look at the responsibility of the bid evaluation committee, it's very clear that that is the only committee that actually looks at the bid documents. They must evaluate, keep their own records, score bidders, and after that they prepare a report of which must go to the bid adjudication committee, of which a bid adjudication committee then interrogates the report. The bid evaluation committee doesn't, the bid adjudication committee doesn't interrogate documents, they interrogate a report. Then we can raise questions there, we can refer the item back. Then after that, the bid adjudication committee will make a recommendation to the accounting officer. Equally so, the chair of the bid adjudication committee will present the report to the accounting officer to say, this is the deliberation of the bid adjudication committee, this is our recommendation. Then the accounting officer can, at no point between the adjudication and the BAC and the city manager, there is an expectation by the current regulation that CM or the bid evaluation committee must, the bid adjudication must check there. So we have agreed, we have mapped a way forward with AG that they've actually accepted that the bid evaluation committee is the responsible. But what we have agreed is that as they check currently, they must print the CSD. So meaning when at the day that the committee is sitting and they are checking the tax compliance, as they print, if say the text, then they must print the copies and attach, so that when they come to audit later, they can see that the bid evaluation committee has performed that function. So it has been accepted, Chair and members of mayoral committee. Hence, you will see that even in the current, the previous audit, there was no issues that they've identified. The issues that MPAC is dealing with are historical issues all of these issues, either some they are 5 years back or 6 years back, some they are 2 years or there's no recent issue that shows that the integrity or the internal controls of the city are compromised. I think you could see, and even in terms of the auditor's AG's report, that our controls have grown. Hence, even themselves, when they audited us last year, they can tell you that even the small trivial irregular that we incurred, that was identified relating to the financial year, that it was around 500,000, if I'm not mistaken, and it was identified by management. The entire AG processes have not identified any irregular expenditure. Then it shows that governance or systems have improved in terms of dealing. So just to answer the question, we don't anticipate any challenges or any issues in terms of breakdown of controls going forward. So we are remaining confident, Chair, that we have implemented all the controls. But the submission we'll make is the resolution, is the breakdown of that write-off, so that cross reference, Chair, can be made, Chair. So I think, Chair, we have addressed all the issues in terms of preventive measures. We remain confident, Chair, that we still have robust internal controls to deal. And it's not only our submission, it's what AG has affirmed to the city, that you have grown, even if you look at our report, Chair. So there shouldn't be any challenge there. So I will ask the team I will forward the resolution of MPAC of council, and we will forward the spreadsheet that shows the breakdown of the write-off. Because our expectation, Chair, is that the MPAC should rather focus on open cases, including actually our challenge, Chair, just to hijack, is the opening balance, to be precisely. The opening balance that's where we have challenges, because MPAC have done, in the past 2 to 3 years, they've done well to deal with recent issues. But our challenges still remains on that 1-point-something billion on the opening balance, that some cases relates to 5 years to 10 years back, of which we'll appreciate the support of MPAC to deal with. But whatever information that Chair has been requested, we will provide to MPAC so that they can have assurance that the matter has been closed, Chair.
Thank you very much. We're going to take another round of questions. Alderman Tlabati, Alderman Matiwani, Councillor Matiwani, Councillor Masuku, Councillor Dolo, Councillor Mjapilo. Thank you. In that order.
No, thank you very much, Chair, and thanks for the responses, CM and Group CFO. I think they are acceptable. It's just a point of emphasis that that reference of acceptance by the Auditor General on your explanation also furnish us with that reference so that it completes the puzzle. And I think on a lighter note, the second point, CM, we're in public hearings, and everything that we are saying is recorded. And I don't think it was appropriate for you to say AG being bully. I think that was not appropriate, and I'm sure you can withdraw it for purposes of our recording, because that is not an institutional attitude on the Auditor General South Africa. And I'm sure you'll accept my request for you to withdraw that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. Mine was on the input from the CFO that they're going to print on the day the CSD. I welcome that. That is just a comment from mine, that I welcome that they've put in the measure now and not wait until the last moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I also welcome the explanation by the officials, the CM and the CFO. I concur with what Councillor Tlhabati has just said, but also, Chair, I would request through you, your team, to send the council agenda that resolved on this matter. Because I think the team might have, because it's the very same team that we had in the previous committee of MPAC. Just as an assurance that indeed the item went to I nearly said court, went to council and it was resolved upon it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, GCFO and the CM, for taking us through this. Really appreciate. We'll wait for the resolution from the council and as well as the schedule from the AG, because that schedule it contains the CSD and the TCC, which we want to verify those two so that we can lay this matter to rest. I think the schedule will definitely guide us, especially on the TCC side, to see when, just to verify the dates of those tax clearances as well as the expiry date of that tax clearances. You mentioned something about the spreadsheet, where CFO, is that the schedule that you are referring to? Because if it's a spreadsheet in a form of a spreadsheet, I have a doubt on that. I think we should have a schedule from the AG, not a spreadsheet. Thank you.
Mojapelo, Councillor Mojapelo.
Yeah, thanks, Chairperson. Chair, I also wish to, I think, welcome the response. I think it makes a matter clear in terms of what had transpired. And I want to appreciate more, Chair, the fact that we're dealing with two numbers, and it's important that there's cross-reference, because my understanding was that the write-off would have been in the preceding financial year for 15 million, correct? And the 7 million would have happened to be part of the 15 million. So that's where the cross-referencing comes, so that we are able to see that within the 15 million, the 7 million would have been part of the bigger amount. And also the point while you are at it, the Group CFO, because my understanding is that this matter now is before us, but it's a technicality, really why it's before us, shouldn't have been. And perhaps even elaborate more in terms of that technicality, because it will assist us to say if it was written off, it shouldn't have been before us because it's closed, and yet it's before us. Perhaps just to educate us in terms of how that then would have happened. And my part, in short, Chair, it's with regards to, the issue of the accounting officer. And I would like us to, especially since, this is, as Alderman Tlhabati said, the public hearing, so that we are all on the same page. The issue of the accounting officer will have to be taken within the context of the systems of delegation. To say, when the law says accounting officer, as much as it refers to the city manager, is the city manager and the collective. Because there's no way that the city manager deals with issues of evaluation. And they will raise issues with the accounting officer, but the accounting officer is everyone that is responsible within the system. So certain things that is expected from the accounting officer, like in this instance, it's expected from the evaluation committee. And I know I'm preaching to the converted because you have dealt with the issue. So the responsibility is placed on the evaluation committee who are sitting with the documents to say you are seeing something that is imminent before you. And you are sending the report to the next committee who will not be privy to the document. But you know that in 2 days, this thing would have expired. And that committee is meeting in a week's time. You need to bring it to the attention of that committee as the evaluation committee to say, take note that this thing would happen, look into, you flag, you know, or do we call them the red flags? You indicate the red flags. So it should not, and I don't think that's the intention of the law, that the city manager would have gone to the CSD, look at all the documents. Yes, it would say the accounting officer, but the accounting officer within the context of the system of delegation. I just felt, Chair, that we need to make this, explicit, so that then people take responsibilities. Thank you, Chair.
All right. Just before we get the officials to respond to some of the comments and questions that were raised here, before the CM withdraws her comment on the Auditor General. Yeah, CM and AG. I just wanted to sort of make a comment and even ask a question myself. Is one, can we then agree that there was an incorrect classification of the 15 million, as it should not have been irregular, because the findings then tell us that there was compliance. The second one is, what assurance can we then be given to, or will we find this assurance in note 52? I heard you mention note 52, in that the 7.3 million that is before us is inclusive in the 15 million that was initially resolved by Council as item 03-2021 of MPAC. And with that being said, the names of the companies that were in that initial 15 million, is it the same? Are they also the same with the two on the 7.3 million that the city manager has referred to in her response to us? And yeah, let me just leave it to those questions for now. Thanks. CM.
Thank you very much. Responding to, firstly to Councillor Muchapilu, we really appreciate your understanding of systems and actually assisting the committee to understand some of the things. If members were never officials, it is sometimes difficult to actually understand how the system works. So we really want to appreciate from administration that you are assisting us to respond to some of these issues. The issue of withdrawing, I want to withdraw without any reservation the language that I've used. It's a language that we use when we work with them, but it is an internal thing, not to be said in public. I withdraw the statement without any reservation, Chair. The issue about the companies, initially the 15 million was about 10 companies. So out of those 10 companies, only 2 now is reflecting, as the CFO has explained. He's going to still explain the 7.3 million vis-a-vis the 15 million, and those companies that were affected by this incorrect classification of irregularity. I will request the CFO to actually, through you, Chair, to actually expand on the 15 and the 7.5 million. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, CM, through you. CM. Chair, we're dealing with one issue, of which is the non-compliance in terms of tax. So that at least, Chair, there is a better understanding, Chair, that our tenders, they are a 3-year tender. then what will happen is that AG, they came, identified this non-compliance during the term of the tender, not at the end of the tender. So they came and they said there is a non-compliance with tax, of which between ourselves and them there was a disagreement, but you know we always respect the process of AG. Hence, MPAC, they referred the matter to internal audit for internal audit to investigate, of which internal audit they investigated, and they came and to a conclusion to say all those tax matters were in order. Actually, that amount was not supposed to be an irregular expenditure. Hence, MPAC took the item to cancel for regularization. That is the first part I wanted to explain. So, but because the tender was at 3 years, there was subsequent expenditure in terms of that tender, of which is the 7 million. So then how do you deal with this thing from the accounting point of view? Is that you cannot, because council has regularized the non-compliance. But the first thing is that in the AG's book, they still view the 7 million, they still view that thing as a non-compliance, because that's what they've reported. Hence, the first thing that you will do, you will disclose it on top so that they can see the 7 million to say this 7 million is still relates to the 15 million. Then the second thing you do on the write-off, you take it out because council have resolved to say the entire contract has been regularized. So that when AG comes, then you are able to give them those documents to say, AG, this is the 15 million we have done, this is the 7 million post of which you have disclosed about, but this is the council view on this item that they have actually regularized this. Hence, there is a write-off. So when we relate to an Excel spreadsheet, remember financial statements are prepared using supporting schedule. So if an amount is consolidated as an X, there should be a breakdown so that members can be able to refer. Hence, I'm saying the write-off amount in the financial statement is a total figure. So our submission is for us to show the breakdown. It's not only going to be the 7 million, because council have actually written off multiple items. So the 7 million will be part of that amount. There will be others that council have resolved, including written off, including the amount on the chemical toll and then others. So that particular spreadsheet, we call it, for easy reference, I was referring it to a spread, but it's a supporting schedules to the notes on the financial statement, Chair. So where we are sitting, Chair, I think ours is to provide the supporting schedule that shows that amount in terms of the in and out, to provide the council resolution, Chair, that talks to that, because Chair, to be honest, after council have resolved and regularized an item, it becomes difficult not to do anything with. Hence, we have written off that amount, and that's being accepted. There won't be in the, because there won't be Chair, in the audit report, there won't be a paragraph that shows that AG has accepted in the audit report, because an audit report is a 3-page report. They just AG summarize on a high level, but what will show that AG has confirmed is what they have published on the annual report, to say the amount that they have accepted as a write-off is an X amount, and we provide that breakdown to the members. I just want to clarify, Chair, that you're not going to see a specific paragraph on the annual report that talks to the 7 million, but you will accept that the fact that they've accepted the entire amount with the supporting schedule should be sufficient to impact, Chair.
Thank you very much, Group CFO. Are there any other questions of clarity and comments? We are fine. Okay. MMC?
Thank you very much. I think possibly what MPAC possibly should have asked, and which does raise a bit of a concern, and the GCFO spoke to me about this yesterday, is at the time of the bid adjudication, the people who actually responded to and put in their bids, in actual fact, were all tax compliant. And we've got the list in this report, but the tax clearance certificates have an expiry date. Now, it might actually be a weakness in the policy or in the regulations, but in actual fact, there's no follow-up to ensure that when a tax compliance certificate actually expires, that a new tax compliance certificate is requested. Because I think in the perfect world, that is what should happen. But maybe the GCFO can explain that more clearly as to how we would control that if the tax matters of a particular company actually deteriorated.
Chairperson. MMC Marangai Moshe, I think we've exhausted that. That has been covered. So let's not really go back. Thanks.
Okay. Councillor Mdluli, Councillor Masuku, Mujapilo.
No, thanks, Chair. I think the political hate must not then take us back to what the officials, the senior management of the council have just explained. It's just messing up all of those things. We've just agreed, and then Group CFO has explained it very clear. It's very clear to us. So it's a problem with the political hate. I don't want to go there, but for now, I think it then needs to find some time with your team, say, and then at some point when they have spoken, because you have dedicated all these responses to them and powers to them. And then for us, it's normal, because now you are coming and telling us that the MPAC should have. We're not incompetent that much. We have accepted the report of the Group CFO and the explanation and the city manager, and then we are here. We have closed the matter. Next time, don't do that to us. Say we are hating us.
Councillor Masuku.
Thank you very much, Chair. MMC, you were given an opportunity when you came in, but you rather gave to...
Chairperson.
Am I out of order, Councillor
Just hold on, Councillor
Chairperson,
Masuku.
point of order.
Okay, thanks, Chair.
Just hold on.
I'm sure the MMC as an adult, he have had the point when Alderman Tabati have raised the point with him.
No. Worry not.
So if someone is covered, the person must be
Councillor
covered.
Matiwan.
They should
Councillor
not...
Matiwan. That's not a point of order. We're not having a dialogue. It's not a point of order. I need not take you through the rules of engagement into what constitutes a point of order.
You can take me, Chairperson, because he already spoke. He already
Councillor
spoke,
Matiwan.
and I'm sure
Councillor
the MMC
Matiwan.
have heard what he said.
Councillor Matiwan.
If you
Councillor
are covered,
Matiwan.
you must say covered. You should not...
Councillor
labor.
Matiwan are not allowed to speak on the platform. I've just said that you must not speak. We're not in a choir. We're not in a choir. Do not, Councillor Matiwan. Councillor Matiwan.
Will not be allowed.
Councillor
allowed to
Matiwan.
be abused.
Councillor Matiwan. You are extremely out of order. I've just told you that what you have raised is not a point of order. Now, we cannot preempt what one is going to speak on, and everyone in this house is going to be allowed to speak. What you have raised is not a point of order. You may continue, Mama Suku. You are protected.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Now, I just wanted to say to the MMC, hence my fellow councillors has said he would have just left it because the explanations and the satisfaction to the committee is 100%. Because you gave him the opportunity to present, but he rather, so he mustn't take us aback because maybe some of the things he said might open up again a discussion, whereas we have closed the discussion. Thank you very much. So we're saying in future, he must not do, he rather present or give to officials. Thank you very much.
Councillor Mjapelo.
No, Chair, I think I'm covered, Chair. The point here is that the Honorable MMC was out of order, Chairperson. You know, in the way and the manner in which, you know, MMC raised the issue, MPAC should have, and then you regurgitate exactly what we've been discussing. That's totally out of order, Chair, and a little bit short of being disrespectful. I mean, we've been deliberating and we raise issues. So that's why I'm saying MMC was out of order, if anything. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you very much, members of the committee. I mean, it's a consistent approach of MMCs who come to this gathering and deem it fit to sort of have subliminal comments on the stature of the committee in itself, as though that they don't report here. And I mean, it's an unsavory comment to make that we should have, when you were given the opportunity in the beginning to articulate what it is that you wanted to do, because I was very mindful of calling you to order, but preferably would allow people to speak and then have corrective measures so that we all understand in future in terms of what it is that we can say and how we say it. With that being said, in future, and also notify other MMCs when you get them in the corridors, so as to say that when you go to the committee of MPAC there, it's not that Zondo commission of some sort, but your response should never be hostile towards the committee, because ours is just to get clarity on matters so that when we deliberate on matters, we are well informed and have a perspective on all different angles. And we should not find ourselves as members of committees in protection of anyone else or political principles in whatever way. With that being said, thank you very much for the clarity that we sought and given. We'll just like to, Group CFO, so you are going to give us that cross-referencing report by the 22nd of February, at most.
You will get it today, Chair.
Thank you. You may be excused. MMC. The MMC remains. CM, you remain there on your left. You can be excused, or you can go to the right. Yeah, he's part. Yeah, unfortunately, you can't take him along with you. Mama Suku, yes, you may speak.
Mr. 2-minute break.
20 minutes? 2 minutes. A smoke break.
Chair.
Yes.
Let's say smoke break.
Chairperson.
Okay, so we'll just have a 5-minute break.
Chair.
And then we'll start at 5 to 12.
Do we have do we have tea and coffee? Or?
There's only lunch. We are saving costs.
Cost?
Yeah. I can buy you tea. I can buy you tea out of my own pocket. Around 12 o'clock we'll start. Thanks.
testing stage, Chair. So we remain confident that this implementation of the system will assist, Chair. As I close, Chair, and even in my opening remarks, Chair, in the previous item, Chair, I've indicated that it's the unfortunate part, Chair, that we are dealing with historical issues, because you can see this relates to transactions that happened long time ago, either 5 years or 6 years back, Chair. It is not a fair reflection in terms of how the maturity of the city has grown in terms of the internal control, Chair. If you look 5 years until now, we have grown as a city, and preventive measures have been implemented in the city, and this has been affirmed by different organizations, either being Treasury or AG, but we are still here, Chair, to account on those issues. We are not running away. Chair, I think I've provided a high response, but the plea is that the recommendation from Finance, Chair, that we will appreciate the support, because all the internal audit report were silent in terms of us disciplining officials, and as a CFO, I couldn't just sit there and implement the disciplinary when there is no recommendation. But if MPAC takes this and they take it to council and it becomes a formal recommendation adopted by council, it will assist us from finance to do consequence management. I'll stop there, Chair.
All right, thank you very much. I'm going to take hands on this matter. It was Councillor Randall first, Councillor De Beer number 2, number 3 it was Councillor Jongizizwe, number 4 it was Councillor Julius Mdluli, number 5 it was Councillor Mujapilo, number 6 it was Councillor Dolo, number 7 it was Councillor Masuku. You may speak. Yeah, you may speak. But it's okay. You may.
Thank you, Chairperson. Yeah. Good day, MMC for Human Settlements and HOD. Welcome to this hearing. Yeah, thank you for the information, Group CFO. I've just got a question. What about the directors? Because it's so easy just to go and get a new company going and do the same thing. You know, how do we block the directors that are actually responsible for these actions? Number 2, I hope that we've got Let's Burn All the Requisition Books Day in Ekurhuleni, where we can get rid of all of these manual processes once and for all. You know, because it seems like, you know, this is what we've heard in our previous hearing, we hear it today again, how officials use that to do these fraudulent transactions. And yeah, I think I'm going to leave the question about the date of the report to Alderman Randall here. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, for the record, I, for one, am extremely aggrieved about the fact that we're sitting with a 130-page report, forensic report with facts, stats, findings, recommendations, which we received on Wednesday. Only by chance, we saw that it could be made available in our last hearing. Now, I'm very happy that we still have to deliberate on this before it goes anywhere else. My concern here is that there's a letter from Human Settlements says, oh, it's not us, hasta la vista. And then we see there from CPO, we've given this guy another chair and a desk and everything is honky-dory. Now, I'm very sorry. I will not even bother to elaborate on those 2 letters. Because Mr. Stuma first attached to the Human Settlements Department, or Mrs. Stuma, just ran her own show. As the HLO, she was also, or he was also the buyer for Section D. And it took Ms. Visser and de Gouveia to highlight the fact that, hey guys, there's something going wrong there. Mr. Stuma was totally unaware of it, and he was the buyer, the chief buyer, in charge of Section D. So he had no clue what was going on there. But if you read through, his name is on every page. Stuma did this, Stuma did that, Stuma did that. Now I'm very pleased somewhere in the report at the back there, there's a recommendation that says that Stuma and human settlements needs to be investigated. So our job is done there, it will come to us, and we will support that view. Then we come to Mr. Machi. 30 of the last 130 pages here, his name is on every item, on everything he did wrong. And all they could say is they gave him another chair and a desk. So he still works. We don't know what his sphere of influence is. I think it's a criminal act by allowing this man to still work in this metro. And that goes the same for Stuma. You know what concerns me? It says here several times that the EMM Finance Directorate did not supply documents requested. So you go and read it. Go and read it. So that's just waved over. Don't worry about it. Forensic investigators ask for documents and the finance department does not respond. I'm not sure how that works. I have 5 pages of questions here, Chair. 5. And each and every one of them is a valid question. Now, I don't want to kill my colleagues off or impose discomfort on the representatives from the various departments. So I will refer that to our deliberation on the matter. But I need somebody to explain to me, how does a report lie around for 2 years without even the department or MPAC or anybody seeing what was reported on? 2 years. 2 years. June 2020. Well, maybe I'm a month or 2 out. How does that happen? Somebody needs to explain that to us. You know, and the only thing that finance has done here this morning is to say, we've come here to ask that you write this off and make it disappear. There's no mention of what's going to happen to Machi. There's no mention here of what's going to happen to Stuma. There's no mention here of, have you implemented all those recommendations in this report? There's nothing alluded to. Just, guys, support us. We want to write off 700,000 plus, and everybody will be happy. Chair, it doesn't work like that. I'm extremely disappointed with what happened here on this report. We're seeing it by chance. And to expect us from Wednesday to now to even interrogate this thing thoroughly so that we can pose questions here to assure the communities that somebody is watching what's going on. I think that's very, very unfair, Chair. Thank you.
Elderman. Thank you.
No, Mangbong Sihlalo. I'm going to confine myself to the 2 responses. Firstly, the 16 February response on the requisition book, and then the 8 February response with regards to the 798,000. And I want to start off, Chair, by saying that whilst we acknowledge Group CFO, the point that you are making with regards to the period at which the event occurred, that it's a long time ago, and making a point that internal control systems have matured. I just want to emphasize that obviously the actions are required now, unfortunately, for the events that would have happened even prior to yourselves. And I think the spirit and the attitude must be that of saying, yes, we note, however, we are preoccupied with actions that will prevent these things from happening again, so that we don't lock ourselves, into what may be perceived as a blackmailing narrative that isn't Ozakdal. The issue is that we must deal with these things as they confront us now. Now, with regards to the requisition books, in your response, unfortunately, it does not have page numbers, but it does have headings. Under the process for issuing of detailed, it says the process of issuing is detailed below. It's on the very first page, if I may give it a number. You make a point that says the collection process speaks to the name of the official, the contact numbers, and the signature. I did not mention the other ones. However, on the same response, on an area that speaks to finance recommendation, you make a point that says finance recommendation indicated that the information available for inspection does not conclusively indicate the official who received the requisition. So I'm just saying, from a layman's person, it would appear that there's contradiction there, because your process is clear to say that there is a name, there is a contact number, there is a signature. But later you are telling us that you could not conclusively indicate the official who received the requisition. Is very problematic. I'm just saying from an analysis point of view. Probably you may want to expatiate to the committee. What do you mean when you say you could not conclusively indicate the official against what you are saying to us as a process, which must automatically reveal the official, the contact details, and the signature? So if you can just clarify that area, it will be helpful. The second point linked to this is that I know that you are lobbying us to support the recommendation, which is a standard process, obviously, to subject officials into disciplinary process. But I just want to pick your brain to say that, do you think that, and it's not for yourselves, it's for the collective that is accounting here, is that, do you think that it will be fair if one says, as a result of the negligence to ensure safe custody of these requisition books, it will be proper if I say that we must equally recover the financial loss from the responsible official? I'm qualifying it in the context of negligence, which resulted into a financial loss for the city. I'm sure you might say, no, Alderman Labati, probably that may be a consequence of a disciplinary action as a sanction. But I want to gauge an attitude of management tone in dealing decisively with this instance, to say that, will you agree with me when I say it is fair enough to say there is a financial loss as a result of negligence, therefore we must recover the money from the implicated official? The second aspect, Chair, as I said, is to deal with the 798. And I think we do note, of course, that human settlement as a department is not directly affected. And again, Chair, it speaks to our internal control processes at the level of finance, SCM or CPO, if I may put it that way. Now, the reality is that we are confronted with fraudulent authorization by a senior manager. And that sadly tells us that there is no evidence of goods that were delivered. And obviously concerning is the fact that the consequence of which is that there is no value for money for the 798. So it's gone, and that is what the report is actually placing. Now, on your response on the letter dated the 8th, while the recommendation or part of the recommendation points to what you are saying to be an ongoing systematization of the procurement process, will you agree with me if I say that whilst that ongoing systematization is taking place, the CPO remains vulnerable and the stores? More so when you indicate to us that the completion date for the automation is set to be the 30th of April, as per page 7. So the point is that, will you agree with me that we remain vulnerable as CPO in that a similar event may occur unless Group CFO and the MMC, you take the committee into confidence to say that, no, as a result of that, we think there are appropriate or sufficient measures that are in place. Now, the irregular expenditure, as I said, is as a result of a fraudulent behavior. And do we honestly think, Group CFO and MMC, that a mere removal from an acting position, as you have stated in your report, is appropriate against the nature of the conduct, which is fraudulent? Because this is what the report says. It says fraudulent authorization, and I'm saying it's a fraudulent conduct. And I'm asking a question that, against that, do you think that a mere removal from an acting position is sufficient? And that, don't you think that you could have sanctioned a better consequence management in a manner that sends a strong message? And again, I re-emphasize the management tone in dealing decisively with such fraudulent conduct. Because in the public eye, it may not be easily accepted to say, no, the person was just moved from acting, ignoring the scale of the event, which is fraudulent. Now, in the absence of a strong sanction, I make a point that you are simply not demonstrating a serious management tone in curtailing a fraudulent culture in the institution. Because this incident we are dealing with, it involves an official. And I repeat, Chair, as I said earlier, that it forms part of what I term to be a grand scale of fraudulent activities in the CPO and stores, including poor controls for that matter. And needless to remind the committee that on the first day of the hearing, we dealt with the issue of Ms. Mulabe, a case where many invoices, Chair, were paid with no proof of services or goods delivered, but subsequently the employee was appointed at real estate. Needless to say that we also dealt with fraudulent requisitions, whereby people were not even on the global list or in the employment of the system, with payments made through, sadly, by our own system, which includes officials, and again, for services that were not rendered. So this is another case of a fraudulent conduct. Tip of an iceberg, I still say. This thing is just big, it's a grand scale in an institution. So I thought I must make those comments, Chair, and hope that the delegation will really take us into confidence. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much. Man,
Sorry,
Councillor
Chair.
Mdluli.
It's not a point of order, but it's just a suggestion, because I think the first two speakers, they've submitted a lot of questions. I'm a bit worried that we might not get all the answers. I propose if maybe they can answer two speakers, then yeah, because it's gonna be too much. I can see they're already tired.
All right.
Bafundile labantu
No,
abaqasha
I
ngabasebenzi.
got when we come to every meeting, that's why it's very note le pampiri there. So you must, we've taken hands and we're going to continue. You'll continue to take notes and they become an essay, it's okay. Councillor Mdluli?
Now, thanks, Chair. Officially, let me greet all the members of the committee. Good afternoon, ma'am. Chair, Councillor Randall touched on a very important point here. But let me declare myself that I will then be contained on the external forensic report, which I will intertwine it with the internal auditor's report. I will not touch on the responses from the group CFO. That this 2-year-old report, number one question maybe to the internal audit, will then maybe explain to us where was it? Because it talks about the staff there, Mr. Malachi, I think after 2 years still in the system for fraudulent activities, of which the report recommends that. But before I touch on it, also to check on the legality of this particular document, this report, because on their they call it disclaimer. They said that please note that unless prior written consent has been provided by us, meaning them, the CDAT and that team of Kanyes, you may not make available or disclose our work or any of our outputs to any person or any entity. It then goes further. So I just wanted to know that we want to deal with this particular external forensic report. Are we protected in terms of legally, or when was that consent report was given to the department or to whoever commissioned this particular report to be, because now we are making this particular report of 2 years old, public. To our legal team, that is page 3 on that disclaimer. Page 2, I think, page 3. And then in this report, it then touches on recommendations that what must the department do. That was 2 years ago, on initiating electronic means of trying to discontinue these things of a book, of requisition book, because it's now clear. On Tuesday, we are dealing with the issues of the requisition book that cannot be accounted by our officials, and our officials are still in part of the system. And then it then boils back to, why are we doing this to the people that we have hired as a council and give them all these authorities and trust them? When something went wrong, we will want to summon them and ask what happened. Why us as committees or as council doing this to our officials, that they must come and beg us for a permission to subject their subordinates to DC? If I've heard the group CFO correctly, because he was lobbying the council, the committee, that at least there must be a resolution that empowers them to deal with this matter as soon as they start. And this report talks about issues of policy, that our policies at some point they are weak. It means people that have created these policies, they've opened a loophole that the grand scale, according to Elderman Jongi, cartel and fraudulent activities will then continue unabated, because these people that we are claiming that they are senior, they will not be able to do anything. They will not be able to care. They can't discipline their own subordinates. I think, Chair, I want to also disclose, Gumanj, that I will then be, when we make our final recommendation, that we must then support what the group CFO has requested, and then to present it in council, and then give them those powers. And then also to the group CFO, I want to also submit that it's not only enough, man. These things of opening criminal cases, blacklisting these directors, once they are stealing the taxpayers' money. I think we need to now disclose that these are not cities' money, they are taxpayers' money. People are paying rent, they are taking grants and paying rent for this municipality to continue. If maybe the group CFO, the ultimate accounting office, and all those departments, legal team, legal gurus that we have hired there, can't they find a way to attach assets? These BMWs that are all over the place here, these houses that have been built with the grand scale that are happening here. Because these things are not being done by alien people. They are done by people that have come and put a paper here and put a paper there, a staff, an official, process it, and then they are paid. If maybe we can also recommend that there must be some way that we need the South African law can attach. There's an asset forfeiture unit. As soon as we pick up those things, they freeze their bank accounts. If the company is registered by an old lady that does not have anything, we must go to that house because he has submitted this document that he must be registered, that 4-room, and attach it, because we need now to recover our monies. In the history of Ekurhuleni, and ever since I've been here, I've been hearing stories that we need to go and recover our monies. No report has come back that we have recovered so far from the companies that have defrauded the state, or the intentions that, or the departments wanted to recover for non-deliverance and other things on what those companies were supposed to do. I think I will also confine myself to the recommendation that this recommendation of this particular report, they're loud like a thunder. They have been guiding us for the last 2 years, but where was this report? This thing should have been kept, and then even today, I will tell you, without any shadow of a doubt, but I don't know those things, without any shadow of a doubt, that they're still using paper here in Ekurhuleni. What this report has recommended, a system should have been developed in 2021. In 2022, by now, maybe it shouldn't be introduced that the computers are there, how the requisitions are done electronically so that we could be able to trace. Even police station, the documents now have been captured there in the system. And we are in the let me leave that thing. Now, my submission that will support the request from the group CFO that you want us to give them powers to take this stuff to a DC, and also we must also lobby the committee that this rotation of employees, they still decide they are going to that hub called real estate of criminals. We can pronounce that hub, because I will tell you, maybe this Malachi guy has been demoted, he went to that real estate thing. There's something wrong, we need to cap it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, you know, when you read, I was sharing with Alderman Masuku before the meeting to say some of these reports should come with a disclaimer or a warning that says do not read before you go to bed. Because, no, Chair, honestly, and it's not a joke, because after you read through some of these reports, it's really difficult to fall asleep. You just can't sleep. You know, your mind keeps racing right throughout the night. And Chair, I want to draw parallels between the two reports. You know, I know we're dealing with a human settlement, but we dealt with a similar report in our first meeting where there's a clear case of fraud and corruption, right? And I just need to draw parallels for you in the reports that will amplify the point that one seeks to make. I first want to start with the forensic investigation report. The forensic investigation report, Chair, it's an assessment of the evidence that we need to collect based on either facts or opinions, which we want to use either to lay charges or to fix the problem at hand. I'm making that because on both cases, if you look at the forensic report, one can easily make certain conclusions to say at times the report, it seems like it cannot be fully be relied upon in a court of law, because there's certain loopholes and certain information that is missing. They lack rigor if you look at them. Point in case, the particular one that we are dealing with, it refers to 38 requisitions, and it says only 31 of those requisitions were provided. But it doesn't probe about the 7 requisitions and why they were not given. I mean, any investigative report would want to know, because therein could be where the devil is hiding. So we should find, or there should be an expression, that's one. The second issue that one would pick up is Mr. Machi was able to be interviewed, but Mr. Wilson could not be interviewed because of COVID. I mean, this COVID, how does it discriminately deal with people? You know, and I'm just raising these two things, Chair, and also relying on my previous experience in my previous life, where we have even instances where some of the people that develop this forensic reports would refuse to come and testify based on their own reports. And now it takes me to the second point, which Councillor Mudluli touched on. Read the disclaimer. Why then do we pay these people so much money to go and find facts for us so that we can use in our favor? And they give us a disclaimer. If you read that disclaimer, it simply says you use this report at your own risk, or you can't use it. We paid for the report check. These people can put these disclaimers in these reports if we pay them. We pay them because we want facts, and facts so that we can use them. And if we need them to come and defend their own report, they must come and defend the report. So this thing of disclaimers in these reports, we need to seriously look into. I want to emphasize the point. These reports must be relied upon in a court of law. They must withstand the rigor. We must be able to go to court with that report. And these disclaimers are not helpful. Some of the parallels now, quickly check. Number one, 2 reports. There's a clear case of fraud and corruption. Some even confesses, right, on both reports. Number 2, reports are conclusive that there's wrongdoing. And the perpetrators are known, at least some are listed. But guess what? The perpetrators are still in the system. After they even confess, we are harboring criminals knowingly. And I wouldn't want, I will refer you to PRECA, which we should all know, the act and what it says about this, the PRECA, Prevention and Combating of Corrupt Activities Act, which places a duty on all of us in position of authority to report offenses that we know or ought to know. And now we know certain things, but we're still having these people in the system. Now, I agree also to the recommendation by the Group CFO, but I would also want to add certain recommendations without repeating what the Alderman Dlabati said, Councillor Mdluli said. There's a clear case, Chair. We said this is a tip of an iceberg. I'm going back to my expression about the audit report to say it gives you a snapshot. The audit, it's a sample. And that sample, when you find it, look at the sample within the context of a bigger picture. Mr. Maji, there's a case that came forward about all those contracts. Ideally, Chair, you should have investigated every decision that this man had made. But we confine ourselves to just what the Auditor General brought to our attention. Oh, whistleblower. We should look into this person, but not just this person. It says, I want to say, Chair, there's a clear warrant of a broader investigation into our CPO and those processes. And that's the recommendation I want to make. To say, let's look into the entire CPO and those processes. We've got 2 cases that came to our attention. Conclusive. And it shows you, they said there's grand scale, let's not make assumptions, Chair. Let's go and investigate and look at the entire system. So I agree, Chair, and I'm saying 1, the people confessed, the people we know there's conclusive evidence, these people should be removed with immediate effect. Ms. Mulabe, it's like we even, if not promote them, but we recognize them. After we know that they have done wrongdoing, we still, it's like we're celebrating them, Chair. And that's irresponsible, Chair. We know. There's no law that prevents you. These people should not be in the system. While the due processes are happening, they must be removed with immediate effect. There's nothing that prevents us from doing that. Because you are sitting with a situation where we've got wolves looking after our sheep, knowingly, and we are fine with that. That's why we have sleepless nights, Chair. So they must be removed with immediate effect and due processes ensue. There's a warrant for a broader investigation of the entire CPO and stores, and I recommend that happens, Chair. Then the last issue, Chair, which also the report is silent about, the forensic report, and I would have expected to have fine expression. Senior officials are not indemnified. Mr. Machi, Ms. Molabe, they report to someone. And those people that they report to are reporting to others, Chair. There's a chain of command. The MFMA tells you about the responsibility of senior officials. When this person is doing all these things, where are all the senior officials? And what have they done? I'm saying senior officials are also complicit. And we must follow that chain of command to say the person that reports to, what did you do? You know about this, what did they do? In instances of, we're talking about finance, it goes all the way to the divisional head and HOD of finance, which would be the CFO, to say, what have you, all have got responsibilities, what have we done? And unless we do this, Chair, it seems like there's no appetite, honestly, to deal with these issues. We know about them, it's just the superficial. We brush over them, but it seems like we are not serious. And I want to echo, this is taxpayers' money. And we have to act in a manner that shows that we are serious about taxpayers' money. We are serious about dealing with corruption. It's not just lip service, Chair. I submit, Chair. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Councillor Joe. Councillor Dolo.
Thank you very much, Chair. I just feel sorry for Councillor Mjapelu because he didn't sleep well. So he has been counting these figures that they don't really make sense. I'm going to start with the basic questions here, Chair. It seems like these purchase orders is just the printing, a money printing machine, and they keep on greasing these POs because they just keep on printing. That's why we are dealing with a long list of POs here, and there's no control. I'm going to first do a submission on the response from the CFO. They are talking about systematizing the procurement process. I don't know when this project started. I don't know if it has been going on for 2 years or 3 years. We don't know what is the project plan. I can say that it's going to be completed on the 30th of April. I don't know if it's a completion day or are they going live for that system, because we need to know, because this is the solution, to make sure that these POs things is eliminated. So we want to know, when did they start implementing this system? Because this system, you might find that it has been there since 2 years back or 3 years back. Next year we'll be sitting here cross-questioning the service provider who's implementing this system. We don't want to find ourselves in that space, Chair. As Mukhalabe Ndlabati said, the what do you call it? The CPOs and the stores remain vulnerable. Is because of these POs, and we want to know, there's any control in place at the moment, or is still the same thing? The POs, they're still printing money even now. I want to know that. And the Councillor Mdluli as well, he mentioned something that I wanted to ask. He asked where was this report? My question, I want to know if this report was referred to the previous MPAC committee. I want to know, or if this report, it was hidden somewhere under a bed. So in terms of the report, I went through this report, and it's very, very disturbing. And I'm just going to pick up Mr. Machi here. It seems like he's enjoying himself in this PO's system, and there's no action that was taken against Mr. Machi. I don't know if they've moved him from this department to another department, and we've got seniors that they were supposed to take a decision against him. I don't know if he's there as a proxy of someone else printing money or what. So it is very suspicious, because someone cannot move from one department to another department. And we've got seniors, we've got heads of departments, we've got MMCs, we've got managers, but nothing. They don't do anything. Maybe it's there as a proxy. Maybe it's representing someone else that we don't know. I don't want to make allegations, but he's enjoying himself. He keeps on greasing this machine of printing money, of POs. Chair, as we look into this report, actually, I went through the recommendations from page 69 to page 98, and I looked at the point number 2369 until to point number 237.27. And there are recommendations here, you know, and the recommendations were not implemented. You know, Mr. Maggi and Wilson still in the employees of the municipality, and there's a fraud against them. You can see there's no control in our departments. There's no control at all. These people are enjoying themselves. Okay. So I want to know if there was a disciplinary hearing for these perpetrators. I want to know, because they were findings. I want to know. This report has been there for 2 years or so. I want to know if there was disciplinary hearing. We want to know that. And the other thing, I want to know if these matters were reported to the police, because this is criminality. Chair. And another thing that I want to ask is, how far is the municipality recovering these funds? But I have a doubt that nothing happened. I don't think there's an action on this report. So I want to know, but I can't ask this. They've been talking about it if the contractors were blacklisted. I don't want to repeat what other councillors they just said. So I think that's my submission. Is very straightforward, Chair, and I'm looking forward to hear from the MMC and the HODs. I want to hear their response on these questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Dolo. Mama Soko.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Chair, first, before I come to the responses by the CFO, I would like to let the committee know that the authors of forensic reports, we usually call them to come and give us a better maybe understanding of the report itself. We never had an instance where we call them and don't agree. They don't agree to come. But that should be with the committee only. I then come to the CFO responses on human settlement. Without doing a tautology or repeating what other councillors have said, CFO, these things has got a very long time happening, of which we strongly believe, yes, I understand there were investigations made, maybe the department would have waited for the reports. However, the report, if I go to page 94 of the forensic report, it clearly states that there was an intent, fraud, there was forgery and uttering. There was negligence, as alluded by Councillor Randall, Councillor Jongi, and also Councillor Mojapilo, seconded by Councillor Dolo, that there are suspicions. The report states clearly that it is plain that the requisition in question were fraudulently created. So I would say to the CFO, what I was expecting today is that maybe we would get a report that says this is how far we've went with the disciplinary proceedings. This were at this stage now that we can start and report the case of fraud and the systems. Hence, the other councillors are saying we can't be relying on a paper, whereas as a city, we long time declared that we're going green. We're not going to be using papers anymore. And we have many similar cases of documents disappearing, whereby we would have taken cognizance that a paper doesn't work for us. If I would make an example with one report that came before MPAC of ICT, if I'm not mistaken, where we could not find a paper to refer to. It was similar to this one. So with that being said, without making a tautology of fraud, because the report is clear that the misconduct was 100%. So let us say to the CFO and the departments, let those reports of DC come before us as reports. There is nothing much to be discussed. Action should happen in those departments. I see MMC Tamahan laughing. Maybe something that you should say phoning, Council. Okay. Thank you.
Group CFO, please respond.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, we have received lots of points of clarity and questions, of which, Chair, we are appreciating, Chair. One, Chair, just for the record, Chair, is that on this submission of ours, Chair, we have not came before MPAC to request MPAC to write off. It's not even part of our submission, especially on this issue of the loss of the requisition. That's not our submission. I wanted the Chair to be clear and recorded as such that myself and the CM we have not submitted any recommendation that is lobbying the committee to resolve on writing off on this item. Two, Chair, the issue of the directors, Chair, I've explained in the last meeting that the reason there is a representation that we seek from the affected directors is that in the current blacklisting regime is that you blacklist the company and its directors. So that process, when it's finalized, it should close everything. But obviously, Chair, we couldn't fold our arms to say we have started the process of dealing with the issues of implementation of the recommendation, then we should stop there. Hence, we said things that are within our control of blocking future payments and future procurement activities. We have done that in our own system. That currently we have blocked them when we are still. So we are waiting for the service providers to make a representation. We'll take those representations to legal and corporate to assist us in terms of taking the matter forward to Treasury. And obviously after that, then it will necessitate the issues of criminal, because after legal and corporate have evaluated those written submissions, they will make a determination whether there is a strong case for us to blacklist or not. Then members, in terms of the submission, there isn't any contradiction from our side, and I want to clarify. Ordinarily, as professionals, Chair, we don't have liberty to criticize other people's work. We receive the reports from internal audit. Ordinarily, us as finance, we're supposed to only come here to report on the implementation of the recommendation from MPAC. But where we sitting, Chair, there is an element where we think is not properly covered in the report. Hence, we want MPAC to add, as they will add their other recommendation. If you read the bulk of the three reports, Chair, there is no recommendation that talks to the DC in relations to people that have lost the requisition book. So hence we're saying that is a point where we think we should deal with. So just to go specific to the question you've raised, Member Hlawat, is that our understanding is that the process was there to say that when a person requests a requisition, the person must sign off, give names and details. So if the requisition has been taken, without that process of a person signing and all of it means the person that has issued that requisition must be disciplined. That's what we are trying to submit, to say we have clarified the process. And if internal audit they have went there and said, but this requisition was issued, but the person didn't sign, it means the person that have issued that requisition should actually be disciplined, because there is a process clarified and the particular official has actually not implemented. Hence, I say in terms of our submission, there isn't a contradiction. We are just showing the committee that this is the process as outlined, and those officials that have not followed that process in totality, there should be an issue of consequence management. It was going to be easy for us to come before MPAC and provide the progress in terms of consequence management. Unfortunately, Chair, we interfaced with this report as part of the financial process late last year, as we requested from internal audit to substantiate the irregular expenditure in the financials, because AG ordinarily they will request this, Chair. But upon further interrogation, Chair, the bulk of this report, they don't have any recommendation in terms of the DC, and it's what I've said even in the previous meeting, Chair, that we are not here to defend anyone, but we must follow the process. The process is that the CFO, that they don't just discipline, there should be grants for DC, either supported by the investigation or supported by anything. So in terms of the report that were submitted to us, the bulk of them is that they were not pinning to any official. So there isn't any specific recommendation in that regard. Hence, we are saying as MPAC, as the report is between MPAC, because our thinking, Chair, is that we are all working together to assist the city in terms of improving, in terms of the processes of the city. We saying the report is still open. It's not finalized because there isn't any decision that council have made in this regard. Then we're saying we are looking to MPAC to say, as they add other recommendation that is within them to do, but the issue of the DC should be considered to be in that report, and we will be able to provide the progress report in terms of the quarterly basis, Chair. Then, Chair, we move to the issue to say why the CFO has not actually recovered anything, Chair. There isn't a specific recommendation that came to my attention that I should recover anything. So hence I'm saying the item is still within MPAC. We have made our submission in this regard, and it's within MPAC now to deliberate, make recommendation that empowers us to go and implement. Unfortunately, members of Mayoral Committee, I can't just today and say, I'm disciplining these officials from, let's just take an example, the officials from Shrek, where they lost the requisition book. It's clear in the investigation report that this official lost that thing. But the investigation report is silent in terms of the DC against that particular official. So me as a CFO or the head of that, to be even correct, the head of the Shrek, it will be difficult for the head of Shrek to just discipline a person, because when you go to disciplinary process, there's charges first that gets thrown, and those charges are supported by a kind of documentation. Hence, we are before MPAC that let's say the investigation from internal audit has started something, but it's not the end. So it's within this committee to assist and close those gaps that have been identified. Chair, I've indicated that, and we are not there. We are here, Chair, to talk in terms of the process of the city. We are not going to run away from accountability, Chair. Hence, when we are saying the issue that these are historic, we are saying there should also be an appreciation that from 5 years until now, the city has grown in terms of internal controls and processes. Hence, even the latest information doesn't actually trigger the same issues. All of these issues have happened long time ago, and we agree that those officials that are implicated, they should account. Where we are sitting, that is the posture of us as a senior managers, that management, that anyone that contributed to these financial losses must account. Chair. Then in terms of the system, Chair, the initial plan, Chair, was to deal with the implementation of this system. I think it was 3 years back, if I'm not mistaken. This is a system development, meaning that when you appoint a service provider, they don't come with a full-fledged system. It means they sit there, then you explain your entire processes to them to say, this is how government works in terms of the procurement, and this is other legislation. Then they develop that in terms of your aspect. Obviously, in between that, there was time lost in terms of the COVID hard lockdown, in terms of the restriction in terms of training and all of those. We lost time in that regard, Chair. But the confirmation we have received from ICT is that the progress is ongoing. There isn't any challenge in that regard, Chair. There are 2 departments that will be going on a testing soon, because a city of our magnitude, Chair, you can't just implement the process without the adequate testing. We should test with the first few departments to check whether the system is efficient, what are the snacks that requires for ratification. Then after we have done the testing and all of them, then it will be implemented across, Chair. I can't, Chair, sit here today and say with absolute assurance to say the issues of fraud have been completely eliminated in the city. I think, those other auditors, they will understand that when you deal with issues of fraud, it's a sophisticated issues, of which if there is a coordination between officials, it might even make it difficult for a well-robust controls to detect those issues, Chair. So where we are sitting, we have implemented those processes. We are finalizing the issues of the ICT, of which it will come handy, Chair, to deal with that. And our submission, Chair, still remains that that the recommendation of the DC, Chair, should find an expression so that there is a reference of throwing the charges, and there is a reference of us coming back and reporting back. Chair, just to answer from a member, is that it will be difficult for me to go now and say you are removed on this particular function, you are moving, when the investigation report is not affirmative, doesn't give that concrete thing. Hence, I didn't want to move in trying to criticize the investigation report, because it will be ill-discipline of me to do that. I'm saying we are sitting here, there are certain loopholes that we have picked, that certain officials appears to be or have done a wrongdoing in terms of the report. Then because the item is here, let's add that recommendation, because there will obviously, that was our understanding, that there will be obviously other recommendations that MPAC will be making in top of what internal audit has already recommended. It was on that spirit to say, let's look at MPAC, that as they make other recommendations, they can also consider that, and we'll take it that then on a quarterly basis, we'll provide a progress report based on those submissions, Chair. There was lots of questions, Chair, that were raised. I think the bulk of the questions, Chair, they are interrelated in terms of the consequence management, and I think all of us, we are agreeing, Chair, that it can't be right that there is a financial loss, but there is no consequence management, Chair. So that support we seek, then we can later be assessed as the CFO or city manager in terms of what is our posture on this, because if we are instructed and given those, then we will come and report back. And if you fold our arms and we don't implement what the MPAC is indicating, then we can be blamed to be actually assisting these officials to get away with this, Chair. I just in the closing remark, Chair, is that obviously it appears that these reports are old, but they were They were just recently discussed with us, but it's an administration issue that we'll deal within ourselves and our sister department in terms of how best can we improve in terms of communicating. It's not for us to be fighting in front of MPAC. Those are decisions that at our level, at administration, we'll deal with them in terms of ensuring that the reports are actually discussed on time, sent to the right department, and implementations of the recommendation are properly tracked. So I don't know whether they had the internal audit they want to add, because I was running away to comment on their work. The department is there to answer the question relating in terms of the audit report. Chair, with your permission, Chair, may I ask the internal audit to clarify the questions that were raised in terms of the work that was done in this regard?
Yeah, Bab Villagas, if you can just explain to us in terms of the disclaimers of the reports, and also particularly page 14, then 1.6.5 specifically as well. So you can just give us a holistic explanation in terms of the disclaimers of these reports.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, committee members. Chairperson, there were two, I think, or there are a number of questions that were posed in terms of the report itself. How long, why is it surfacing now, and around the disclaimers. I'd just like to add to what Group CFO has said. As part of the UIF process, there is a reconciliation that is done by AG and ourselves and Finance. So as you can see that the report is towards the end of the 2020 financial year. As part of the reconciliation, it was detected that the UIF had not yet been disclosed, hence the disclosure in the 2021 financial year. And the Group CFO has correctly alluded to that as part of the UIF W process. The issue of the disclaimer, Chair, I think Alderwoman Masuku has also covered in that the report is made available for the city. Instances where it needs to be disclosed outside the city, I think there is a process in terms of accessing that report, but it remains the property of the city once has been issued. And as Alderwoman Masuku has indicated, that the service providers are then recalled to come and present the report. So just talking to that disclaimer, it just says prior to, there has to be a consent that has to be given, but that consent will be given from the office of the city manager because it remains the property of the city once has been issued. Chairperson, there were two remarks that were made from the committee in that the report cannot be relied on, but however, there was also another remark that was made that the report is conclusive, which that to me it is very contradictory. I stand before you, committee, Chairperson, that the report can be relied and can be used in the court of law. There is evidence. Everything that has been provided in the report, it is supported by evidence to that effect. There was also a concern that was raised in terms of where are the senior officials in this process. Chairperson, I think this was also explained in our previous sitting where it was indicated there is a delegation of authority. As you can see that all these transactions are just below the threshold, the 30,000 threshold, of which any senior person will not necessarily be involved in the process. They would not know what's happening at the ground level. So everything is limited to whoever can authorize up to 30,000 threshold. Therefore, hence, the senior people are not in this case. So had it been a 10 million rand transaction, city manager would be also involved, would have been signed that. So that's how in terms of the delegation. So therefore, it's only been limited to 30,000 threshold. Chairperson, also there was an issue of scope in terms of ordinarily you would look at all the transactions that would have been approved by a certain individual. In this case, the scope is clear, Chairperson. We are limited by in terms of the scope, where it says look at the following 38 transactions. However, had the scope was issued to us, like in the previous sitting where the real estate has said there were only 2 transactions that affected real estate. However, in their mandate, they said, look at everything. So in this case, if the scope is not clear in terms of us looking at everything, we will not do that, because should we do that, then we'll be seen as scope creeping. So we will be like we have a personal vendetta against certain individuals. Chair, I think I've covered the issue of why the report has remained for 2 years, as well as the issue of disclaimer. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Bab Lamin. Bab Villagas. I'm just going to take a second round of hands. Before I do that as well, CFO, on the letter of the 16th of February 2022, no? The second page, it will be paragraph, let's go to paragraph 3. I'm just looking for further clarity and explanation. Where you write, it is important to note that once the requisition book has been issued to the user department, supply chain management has no control over its usage, safeguarding, and monitoring. At the point that the department takes custody of the requisition book, all responsibilities therefore lie with the department. Are they also supposed to be doing their monitoring at a department level? That is what I just want to ask.
Yes, Chair, that's correct, Chair. It's like we take it like any assets, the requisition is, for example, if ICT have allocated the laptop to the CFO, that laptop becomes my responsibility to make sure that it's safeguarded at all costs. And if it gets lost, it's within my responsibility to notify the employer that that particular asset of the city has been lost. That has been a standard norm, Chair, that if we have issued a requisition to the department becomes responsible to safeguard that. And if there is a situation where it's lost, it's within the department to notify the employer that the requisition book has been lost, so that the employer can make a preventive actions to prevent anyone who's trying to use that particular asset.
Right. I'm going to take a round of hands. Councillor Dolo, Councillor Randall, Councillor Mujapelo, Councillor Jongizizwe, Councillor Mdluli.
Thank you, Chair. Before I make a submission, what time is lunch? Or are we not eating today? It seems like it's already 2 o'clock. Chair, I'm just reminding you. Yeah, okay, I don't know. It's 2 already. All right. Yeah.
Okay, we are just going to temporarily excuse the city manager. You may proceed. Lunch will follow after when we are done here.
So I'm seconded to hear that we should break for lunch, Chair.
It's the last item.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
So,
Let me make my submission.
Yeah.
I think I will survive for another 30 minutes. Chair, I'm just a bit concerned about the system that the CFO just gave a feedback about it. And because it's the solution, actually. And he gave us a duration that they've been implementing this system for a period of 3 years. And I'm a bit worried because we are dealing with the issue of requisition books, which the system will replace the requisition book. The reason why we are here is because of these requisition books. And the system cannot take 3 years. It's highly impossible to implement the system. I really want to zoom in that system, and I want to know what kind of system is that takes 3 years, and the business processes, because there's a mapping of business processes. They need to go for production where they develop the system. They test the quality of that system. There's a training, then it's production. People are using the system. That is our solution, actually, for this municipality. And I'm a bit concerned because it cannot take for 3 years. This is not the Department of Transport where the system is broken. We are talking about a municipality with a GDP of 300 billion rand. But the system taking 3 years? No, I'm a bit worried. I'm a bit concerned, Chair. And I'm telling you, in next year, we will be investigating the same service provider. I'm a bit worried. That's my very, very big concern.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I'm very concerned here. You know, this metro every year does hundreds of disciplinaries that this council doesn't even see. You don't have to have permission from council to do a disciplinary if it's a departmental matter, and I think our legal advisor could possibly confirm that. There's hundreds of disciplinaries that are done that we don't see. Why would we delay disciplinaries there when there's a clear report saying what's wrong, and then to say, oh no, you haven't given us permission to do the disciplinaries? I'm very concerned. This Mr. Matakanyani, who appointed Mr. Mati, there's a report, Annex Q, I think, that says that the man was underqualified, he had no experience, he was not suitable for the job, yet this man went ahead and appointed him. Now that, for me, leads to another question. Was there collusion between the two of them? I need to raise that question. Because why would you appoint a patently unskilled, unsuitable person to come and do this job? And look what he did. Look what he did. And you know what really concerns me, and I don't know if the colleagues have seen it, it was raised nearly 38 times by the forensic investigators, impossibility of performance, suspect timeframes, where a requisition would arrive after a quote or an invoice would arrive before the quote and the requisition. Go and look there, those 38 items. It's mentioned there time and time again. Impossibility of the event happening. And when we read here also that there was no documents available from the finance department, if you do forensic auditing and investigation, those are big red flags when you get to that stage. I'd like to know. And then
Councillor Randall,
sorry,
just to pause you a bit, can you refer us to the report when you speak of someone being appointed?
Yes, it's Annex Q.
Annex
Q, I'm sure it is. And then what really concerns me, Chair, is the GFCO sits there and says that he can't take action against an official because of some report. This is not some report, it's a forensic investigation with clear facts substantiated by documentation and stuff. How is it possible that no action can be taken? I think this was just whitewashed, and I even get the impression that they didn't even read the whole report. Go and have a look there. It should be done, this should be done, that should be done. Really, Chair, I despair when I hear responses like this. We're talking here nearly 800,000 rand.
Councillor
I'm the third one, Chair. Chairperson, I wish to, address this particular issue, Chair. Internal audit is not under attack, Chair, and there is no need for them to be defensive. If anything, Chair, we trying to assist. There's a lot of reliance, Chair, of MPAC on the work that emanates from internal audit. And they say forewarned is forearmed. We are very nice now. I can promise you next time we would not be this nice. In my previous experience, and I've shared it with internal audit and with legal, to a point where I actually gave them instructions to say some of the reports, Chair, that comes through the processes. I made that expression even in writing, to say they were not worth the paper they were written on. And it's a point to say we rely a lot on the work that they're doing. They must just make sure that when this work comes here, from the service providers, they check the work. They make sure that the work talks to what it should be talking to. I'm speaking from experience, I'm not dreaming, Chair. And I will take it outside the meeting with the DH on some of the issues so that I can amplify my point with it. Now, let's go to, that's why I'm feeling like they're being defensive and unnecessary. Go to the disclaimer, Chair. Let's read the disclaimer that they deliberately choose to ignore and go to the one that seems to suit them best. Read that disclaimer. Now, I'm going to read it on the basis of the previous experience because we had a similar problem. Now the disclaimer says, in using this fact-finding report, the municipality specifically indemnifies Khanyisa Forensic Audit for any losses, either directly or indirectly, arising out of the use of the report and the information therein contained, and further indemnifies Khanyisa Forensic against any inaccuracies and discrepancies contained in the report and any legal proceeding that may arise after the release of the report. Read that very carefully and get legal to give you an opinion in terms of what that means. I'm not saying the report cannot be relied upon in a court of law, but you are doing that at your own peril. Should it be proved that it's inaccurate, they are indemnified. And this is the point that I'm simply raising to say, go tie up these loose ends. Because we pay millions of rands for this report to be made. We want to be able to rely. We want to safely go to court. And I gave you an example, Chair. I was speaking effect when I said that. There was one instance where a person was not even prepared to defend their own report in a court of law. So that they come to a committee and present is not court. We say, come, we rely on your facts or your opinions. Come help us fight this in a court. They say no. And they read the indemnity to say, no, we are indemnified. And I'm simply saying, address this thing. I'm sharing experience that will make us better going forward. Chair, I was listening on a much lighter note. I was listening recently, talking to the issue of the CFO, to a young, a brilliant young man. Chair? Yes. I was listening recently to a brilliant young man talking about how things can lost into translation if you want to translate a language. And I find it difficult to express this point and translate it in English, Chair, about these requisition books that are lost. Because if you talk English and say lost is lost, right? But Gaspedi Chevare Adia Timela, Badilatili. And you can translate that into English about these books that are lost. But in pursuing this, that's why you would realize that, they're not necessarily lost as in lost in an English term. They just deliberately, some of these things, made to be disappeared, like the pots. Chair, thanks, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Councillor Joe Mujapelo. Elderman.
Yes. No, Mangbong, Chair. I really wanted to hear a solid tone from the response that really commits to deal with these indicators of grand scale from the management point of view, except for what is being sought from the MPAC, because we are not running departments on a day-to-day basis. It's run by those that we have employed in the system. So sometimes we can only give to a limited extent the support based on the frequency of our meetings as the MPAC, because I don't even think that the chair outside the MPAC meetings can do anything else on behalf of the committee to give that particular support. But I strongly feel that there is a missing tone, Chair, from the senior management of the institution. Let's wait for the MMC and the CFO. Okay. So I am still calling for that strong tone from the management, Chair. And I do feel for you, CFO, but I must be frank to say you are sitting with a highly compromised CPO and stores. And what we have dealt with can be used as a basis to qualify my statement because it's a tip of an iceberg. Probably a lot has happened, which the Auditor General has not revealed. And that's why I'm saying, I think take it in good spirit when I say that you are sitting with a highly compromised CPO and stores. Because even from the face value, when you are saying we have matured as an institution, I may agree with you that we may have matured in terms of demonstrating the control measures that we have put in place. However, there remains a genuine concern for me whether these control measures that we are purporting to have matured are genuinely effective in addressing some of these concerns. And probably something that from the management point of view, you really need to dig deeper into, because all the boxes can be ticked through the system. But the reality is that this may be done against what the institution ought to benefit. The third point, which is a parting comment before the last one, is that I would have thought that you will give us some greater assurance, especially on the systematization of the SCM processes. Given the fact that you are saying by April 30, there should have been some progress. But I raise a concern to say, in between, what assurity, are we given as a committee that these measures are in place and are sufficient enough to prevent these things from happening? If you can just reassure us that committee, there are measures whilst we are dealing with the ongoing process of systematizing the related processes of requisition, ordering, and payment. And lastly, Chair, when we engage based on what is presented to us in the form of your own responses. And I did not say that it's contradictory, but I would have said that from how I have analyzed the issue of the process and your subsequent recommendation, that says, no information was available upon inspection for you to conclusively indicate who received the requisition. But you are able to tell us that in any case, there is a confirmation that these requisitions, they were transferred to Springs. I'm just saying. You are able to confirm to us transfer, but you are unable to conclusively say that now process corner, but this person who is involved in the process, you can't establish it, but you can establish that indeed they were delivered. They can't just be delivered without human being involved in the process. So I was merely seeking clarity on what I would have assessed as a concern of some contradiction on how I read the response. But I still want to emphasize, Chair, that there must be a serious tone, MMC and the Group CFO, to really deal with issues of fraud, maladministration, and manipulation, especially in the CPO and the stores. And I think it's upon your political leadership, MMC, to prioritize the issue of stores and CPO as a way of trying to understand what is really happening there in that particular unit. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you. Councillor Mloli?
No, thanks, Chair. I'm going to be very brief. And most of the time it's very difficult to speak after Elderman Jongi, because he's always being a keynote speaker, it's like addressing a rally, then he's closing with 2-hour speech.
Addressing a rally where?
Imagine that one. No, thanks, Chair. Man, on a very serious note, why I'm now put a back and then taking this thing that the CFO has just said here. And we are perpetually ignoring the call, the cry from this particular department. When I'm saying Group CFO, I'm just talking about the entire department. That he's indicating that the city is under siege. And all what we want to do, we want someone to blame. We want that particular official to blame. It has been even said, you'll repeat that, I've just Zulu. So, I had the mail. But then the problem is that he's saying to us, the city is under attack from its own officials, but he is tired, he cannot do anything. Why should we, for now, said that yes, in our further recommendation that will be taken to council, we want to empower you just to see a trial of what's going to happen. Persecute, take those employees to DC, because ultimately it's the one that must account for to the 3 million people on what is happening with their finances of the city as a group CFO. And then the question will then arise. It's a direct question that will then arise now that will must go to the CFO. Is the city still using quotations? If yes, that they're still using quotations, let us now lobby the committee that in one of the resolutions, all those quotations, all those 9 regions, all those regions, they must not have an excess of a quotation. They must be based in his office. He must be empowered to create a team. That any department that wants to buy, whereas we are still trying to figure out how to implement those recommendations, everything is sent to his office for processing and so forth. These things of decentralizing these things, that is why these officials, they know that the worst case scenario, what they can do to you is the city. The city will not kill you. The city will not attach your asset. The city is going to talk in committees and say that we're going to open cases for you. And then there's a hub for us there, as the criminals of the city. It's called real estate. They will go there and chill. They will locate. Let's now give in one of the recommendations, empower the group CFO with his team, with not him as individual, but his office, that everything that must be paid in the city, everything that must have a requisition in the city, he must know. It must be in his office. There's no Springs people that must then, they want to buy a club. If they want to buy a club, that's the problem with this tender system. If they want to buy a club, they must then make a call, make an email. We want to buy a club. Then that office must then start doing all of those things. Close everything that is out there. I think then we'll have a solution. Pending what will then be the way forward. Because we're going to sit here, even today, fraudulent activities are continuing via this particular paper. And then the next year we're going to speak, we say that on the 15th of February, we spoke about this. Then on the 18th of February, the prerequisition book was missed. There were transactions that were carrying in until March, and then that book got lost. And then the last one, Group CEO was not saying you or have you recovered anything as yet? Because ever since I arrived here, I know that we're going to open cases and then we're going to say we recover. I never heard a story that the city of Ekurhuleni has won a case. Anything. I've never heard that the city here has won a case. So that's why I mentioned that on all those legal people that we have lawyers here. We hire people here based on their education. They are educated people that are working here in Ekurhuleni. Lawyers here. They must create something. We must then be able to keep this. We must able to retrieve. We must able to close the bank accounts of these particular people. Bank accounts must be frozen, because once you start there, they will know what they have thing. Because one thing, if you're going to rely on these things of what you call pension, I will tell you now that this is the issue of pension. Councillors that have been here for 5 years, they've got 116,000 pension. These people are eating millions. We say we claim that we're going to hold their pension. They don't care about this pension. Either way, they're too little. So, Chairperson, there was an outcry here. We should then find a proper response in this public hearing on saying that, yes, Group CFOs, we are Siaguzwa, we are under attack from the cartel that is within. These are not aliens that have attacked us. These are the people that are working for us, our staff that are working for us. We are now going to empower you through the resolutions of the council. And then we're going to have lawyers. These lawyers must stop losing cases. When we are taking to CCMA, they must win. Because we're going to have a kangaroo court here. 33 million people, 4 to 4 million citizens here in Ekurhuleni, they are relying on us to protect their monies here. They cannot be eaten here. and go to be dragged somewhere. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mdluli. Perhaps before you respond and also closing up this particular item, would be one, in as much as we are supposed to have 3 items here, CFO, you are making it extremely difficult for us as well to engage on the second matter, Shrek, because we are yet to attain a report from you, even having made a commitment to have this report submitted to us in the previous sitting. So in the absence of that report, we cannot extensively in our own committee sitting deliberate or even make inputs here in terms of the questions thereof pertaining to that report. Needless to say, we can be in acceptance to say that it's the same modus operandi, but there are merits that can be attained in each individual report that speak to probably particular individuals and recommendations and specific recommendations, that is. Yeah, what is missing is also the STEN approach, of which I agree, to decisively dealing with the matters that are before the department. Because what is a network in all of these departments, whether it being the Department of Human Settlement, Sharek, and that the hub of at least what we see as corruption, that the real estate would also be your department, which facilitates the payments ultimately. And there is no STEN approach in terms of how we are going to deal with officials, not only officials that are fingered, but also those who should ordinarily be the ones that account directly for the mismanagement of funds of the city, who are custodians as well, particularly that Central Procurement Office. I think you owe it as well to the city of Ekurhuleni and your duties and functions to extensively investigate that CPO, because from at least where we are sitting, there are 2 folds to ghost billing. It's the one where where there are people outside the system of the city of Ekurhuleni who've attained these requisition forms, books rather. They've fraudulently done whatever process, those people can be found, but there was someone in the system who paid. That is one. Then there's also the element where there are officials within the city of Ekurhuleni who are themselves billing the city, going through the process of requisition books and so forth, and then their services not rendered, there's no value for money, there's nothing, but then the city still pays. And I don't think that you can confidently tell us in terms of the extent thereof. And that would require an investigation. Must not egg walk on such matters. And where people need to be dealt with. I mean, a recommendation is a recommendation. All right? We must not be direct and clear with you to say, Zamaya wokobas mang or take disciplinary against this particular person. If a report leads you towards a particular rationale, then you owe it to apply as well a decision based on what the report is leading you to. So it cannot be accepted that Maji. A simple example of we're sitting with a report here, 2 years, right? that could have been engaged, dealt with. Margie, the only recommendation we can assume to have been taken as action, it's not even action, it's diddle-daddling, is to say, no, okay, we have removed him from the element of procurement, but he remains within the city earning a salary. You don't need a recommendation that speaks to say that DC must be taken against this guy, and so that this report that is here with us, we can use this report that is here before us, has implicated him, and therefore we must find recourse beyond having shifted duties and functions. We don't even know if he's earning a higher salary or he's now earning a lower salary but doing lesser work. We don't know anything. So there's no system of accountability. And because it smacks of this being a syndicate and a modus operandi of stealing money from the city and not even rendering services, you know. The last point is, I think you should put to confidence members of society and ourselves in terms of the status. If you are saying April 2020, at least in accordance to these reports, that means we have reached the final stages. You must be able to tell us from the 1st of May, May Day, Rotoma and all these things of requisition books are not going to be there anymore. You must be able to put us into confidence. Where you have sort of, I think I read somewhere you've initiated it in a particular department or so forth. What has been the challenges that you have experienced there? What has been the successes thereof in terms of the full implementation? Thanks.
On page 3 of the forensic report, items 23, 24, 25, clearly indicates recommendations. So there can't be claims that there are no recommendations in this report. Go and have a look at the recommendations on Marchi and the requisition books. They're all there. So the report is complete and clear. Recommendations, do this. So they can't claim they didn't know.
Thank you very much, Councillor Randall. CFO.
Thanks, Chair. We welcome the inputs and the point of clarity, Chair. Chair, just to start with your questions, I will not answer all in particular order, but I will answer the questions, Chair. My understanding, Chair, is that there was a communication from the Internal Audit Department to your support team that the forensic reports are available with internal audit, of which I think they did email. However, in that email that I've seen where I was CC'd is that they've indicated that annexures were too huge to be emailed. Your team was organized for collection. I just want to clarify that, Chair, that the reports remain the responsibility of the internal audit together with the supporting document. Hence, I facilitated that they must be emailed to you, but I think the internal audit waited for an official from your team, Chair, to go and collect that supporting schedule. But Leslie can talk to that. But I was CC'd in that email, and I saw from internal audit there was an initiations to deal with the issues of submitting those reports, Chair. Chair, I think generally, Chair, the sense of the committee I support, Chair, and any recommendation that the committee will make in terms of improving the systems of government, Chair, we will be received with positive mindset from ourselves, and we will implement and report back on a quarterly basis in terms of the progress in that regard, Chair. When we moved in the city, Chair, we came and initiated different elements to improve the governance of the city. One of the problems, Chair, that we confronted, Chair, was the issue of decentralization, where procurement was done by all departments in the city, especially on quotation, where they have requisition, they will source quotation themselves and submit those to supply chain for processing orders and payment. And when we sat with my team chair, we thought that that particular process is not correct, because officials in department, they are not procurement expert, they are not supply chain gurus, they can't be performing. Then we ought to centralize the process, chair. But it came with its own challenges, chair, to be frank, that certain departments were not in favor of that, because it appears as if we have taken certain responsibilities from them. But we carry on, chair, to deal with the issues of centralization. Is what we have included as an interim, and we have centralized this to the divisional head supply chain to deal with the issues of requisition and all of those, chair. Those are the certain internal controls that we have implemented when we are still dealing with the issues of centralization, chair. The system, chair, we did, ICT is responsible for implementing the system, chair. And it must be understood, chair, that there was time that we have lost in the past 2 years, that it can't be the fault of the city nor the officials. There was extended hard lockdown, of which necessitated certain officials to work from home, of which prevented certain training, certain engagement. I can tell that in that 2 years, maybe we had 6 months out of that 2 years where we could sit as officials and deal with this, chair. One of the issues that I want to amplify in the system, chair, is that when you buy or when you develop a system, you don't get the full complete system. You appoint a particular service provider, you create processes based on what policies you are having and level of delegation and all of those. Then based on that processes, chair, is what gets developed in the system. Then it will go for testing and training of that. Hence, even the ICT department have opted to, for now, focus on the 2 departments, of which they've given a confirmation to us that they will be going for testing in April. Chair. Based on that, then, it will, based on the testing, chair, we'll check what are the challenges, what are the issues that needs to be ratified, or whether the system is ready for full implementation by all the departments. And in this regard, we can still submit a progress report in that too, for the comfort of the committee, in terms of how far are we, have we moved in, what were the challenges. I can liaise with the head of the ICT to assist us, chair, in dealing with this, chair. Chair, we remain, chair, fully to support the internal, the response. I mean, the MPAC. We are not going to defend any official, chair, that has been found to have done anything wrong. We will subject all officials, chair, to a process of disciplinary and deal with the issues of consequence management, chair. The reason, chair, I've responded in the manner we have responded in the letter, chair, or in this, chair, is that if you go to certain reports contained in this, chair, there isn't a recommendation specifically of DC, chair. And I think we should clarify this, and or the committee should assist, because my own interpretation, chair, when I came here on Monday, was that the investigation by internal audit was done. But the general sense was that, and I think I relate to what Member Dlabati indicated, that it's not the end of that. The committee still have an obligation to add the recommendation on top of what internal audit has recommended. If you look on those reports, there were 3 or 4 recommendations that were affecting finance, but the recommendation in terms of the DC, there was no official that was a recommendation to say CFO go and discipline. Hence, we are looking to say, as the report is in front of the committee, as the committee resolve and recommend to cancel, we're saying that there is, based on the facts here, that there appears to be officials that have done something wrong, of which, through that process of DC, it will assist us to get more facts for the MPAC. It was on that spirit. We will never come to MPAC and ask MPAC to give us functions that we have as HODs. If in the report is clear that 1, 2, 3 must happen, we will deal with that. We will revisit the issue in terms of the Elvis and all of those, because the report I've got from the head of supply chain in terms of how they've dealt with the entire recommendation is what I've presented, Chair, because the head of supply chain, they had any engagement with internal audit, and that's the response they've provided to my office. But in certain reports there, Chair, there is not clear officials implicated with a specific recommendation for us to implement. And we're not, Chair, when we are sitting, we are not defending anyone, Chair, and I think it should be taken in that spirit that there is certain trends that have been in the system followed over the years, Chair, and if there is a particular change of that trends, then it should be properly clarified, because my understanding, and that has been my understanding over the years, Chair, is that if someone is not implicated in terms of a recommendation from internal audit, when there is a forensic that has been done, you can't do a DC on that regard, because the charge sheet has to be supported by something. But if that understanding of mine is different from what MPAC is understanding today, and they are actually directing us to something else, Chair, we will be guided on that regard. Then I agree with you, Member Tlhabati, that how we have crafted and why we've provided the process is to say, because these are all things, the only thing that we could work with is the supporting documentation that are contained by internal audit. So we went to because the process is that anyone that received or issued this must sign off. So the starting point to get an official that actually was responsible for is to go to the documents to say this requisition form, who actually requested it, who signed off. So on this specific one where there's no names, then we are indicating to say, based on the report done by internal audit and the annexure that we have received, there is no name. So meaning that the officials that actually should account is an official that issued that requisition, because the process was clear that if Kariso comes in to request, you must write the name of Kariso, you must give the contact details of Kariso, and Kariso must sign off. So if that person decides to issue that without following a process, what it means, in my own understanding when I was analyzing this report, is that particular official must actually account to say, why did they decide to issue a requisition book outside what is defined as a process? That is our submission, Chair, to MPAC in that regard, that where we are sitting as management, we still feel that we should follow this requisition book, so that at least there is a balance, because the bulk of the forensic report talks to the service provider. We're saying, yes, we will deal with the issues of the service provider, the blacklisting and all of that, but how do you deal with the issues of accountability within the officials, and how do we deal with the issues of building confidence in the system? Because the general sense that you are raising, Member Tlhabati, is a general sense that majority of the people they are raising to say, it appears that there is lots of weaknesses in the CPO, and because there's different value chain affected officials, the sooner we deal with the issues of consequence management, the issue of sending the message clear, then the attitude will change, because hence I've amplified earlier to say, we are not dealing with lack of controls here, Chair. Where I'm sitting, I don't have doubts that the city have grown. There is a sound controls at this point in time. As a CFO, I can sleep at night knowing that in terms of maturity, in terms of internal control processes, they are there. But the issue is about the attitude of the officials, whether if you have put in a control, It's the attitude of the officials to appreciate that particular contract, but because that is a separate engagement to say, and it's demonstrated in terms of the internal audit to say there was an internal control put by the management to say someone must sign for a requisition, but the person issued a requisition form without that particular person details. It shows that it's an attitude of the officials, not necessarily that there was no control, because the lack of control will mean that we are issuing a requisition without having processes, but there was process guiding those officials. So, but we are all here, colleagues, to get support from MPAC. If there is any other additional issues that they want management to implement, we will clearly implement. We are not defending anything, and we will still revisit that report on the NS. Hence, I've indicated that the report appears to be old, but there's internal things that ourselves and internal audit to deal with, because when we interface with this thing was later last year, but it's not something that we want to engage at the MPAC, because they are our colleagues, to see the efficiency in terms of timelessly submission of report, engagement of reports, because the earlier the implementation, the better. But the reason we are here in terms of the DC is that some of the reports that we have read at the high level, it doesn't have a recommendation to DC. So we are not asking MPAC for something that council has given us. We don't have anything at this point in time. I'm just saying let's work in that spirit. Chair, I'll stop there and take any follow-up if there's any. Chair, others are inputs of which will reflect as management and improve the internal control. Because that's the spirit that, Chair, when we come here for engagement, there's certain issues that they raise that are valid, that we'll have to reflect as management and see how best we can improve the systems of government. Chair. Thanks.
Right. Any follow-ups? Okay, Councillor Randall wants to make a comment.
You very quickly on page 92, 2.3.7.7. Based on interviews held with Matakanyani, we opined to the effect that Matakanyani had failed in his responsibility as the Senior Manager Operations Procurement to manage MARCHI diligently. As the Senior Manager, Matakanyani is obliged in terms of his fiduciary duty to oversee the performance and the role played by MARCHI as the senior buyer. Matakanyani's evident lack of oversight and management led directly to MARCHI's gross negligence and is a direct causal link that led to MARCHI perpetrating procurement fraud, which resulted in an irregular expenditure. We therefore recommend that Mr. Matakanyani be disciplined for breach of fiduciary duties. Is that not a clear instruction? Is that not a clear instruction, Chair?
Yeah, it is. And most of our deliberations as members of the committee will extensively interrogate and deal with them in our committee sitting. They don't require the public hearing and so forth in terms of the responses and deliberation thereof. Baplamini, announcements?
Thank you, Chair. The announcement that I've got is that lunch will be served in the banquet. And then secondly, Chair, is that the next set of hearings will be on the 4th of March. The following department will be appearing before yourselves as a committee. That will be Ekurhuleni Housing Company, ERVAT, and Transport. Those would be the department that will be before you on the 4th of March 2022. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Bab Dlamini. There's also a funeral at the Mdluli family. Councillor Mdluli lost his nephew a few days ago, and the burial is tomorrow, starting at 9 o'clock, in Ngala section in Spruit. With that being said, thank you very much, councillors. Thank you to the members of society. Thank you to the officials for forming part of this meeting. As we have all noted, we're dealing with a matter particularly today of manipulation of state resources. Perhaps it's time as the city of Ekurhuleni we start looking at building internal capacity in terms of procurement. I still don't understand why a city still has to get someone and a service provider to procure a simple thing like a tea bag. The meeting is officially adjourned. Thanks.